r/AskReddit, people who work in hotels. What was the strangest thing you found in someone's room? A fingernail man, made from full fingernails. When I was about 17 I left a pile of pillows wrapped in a sheet, the telephone cord wrapped around the neck, and the Holy Bible opened to Exodus. I'm sure it was interesting, to say the least, for housekeeping, but I feel like an now for giving them extra work. Haha, Sarai. Housekeeping called me because they were too scared to clean a room. Went up and the curtains were closed, the mirrors were covered with fabric, there were a bunch of candles and symbols, odd tokens placed all around the room. The whole setup was strange, but hey, each to their own. Not exactly things in rooms, but the lawyer convention always hired this one prostitute 3 years in a row. She was really pretty and super nice. I loved the sound of her voice. Anyway, must have been expensive. They would give her the penthouse and would be going up and down the stairs all night. Small hotel. At a different place in the same town, this really attractive couple came in, rented a room in the Sty Motel I worked at, dropped 2 duffel bags in the room and left. I figured they were going to dinner, but they never came back. Later some other person went in the room and left with the duffel bags. People do sketchy s in hotels. Oh, here's a real one. Housekeeping found s smeared all over ones. Sex toys, a lot of them, all under the bed in the metal box frame. Like, I mean, enough to start your own s store. Also about used 50 syringes, burnt spoon and other drug paraphernalia. Oh, the stories I can tell from working in hotels for so many years. Strangest? Sex toys and drug paraphernalia were pretty typical. Dildos and glass pipes were the most common. But the funniest one for me was finding a love harness still attached to the corners of the bed, and having to explain to the poor, naive front desk worker what it was. Made even more hilarious when she asked why anyone would ever want to do that. The weirdest setup that I personally found was in a room that demanded to have 2 mini fridges brought to their room. I brought both of them up to the room, and found a wall-to-wall buffet of vegan, organic, gluten-free snacks. Hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in snacks, neatly laid out. No meals or substantial food, just tons of munchie devices. And they wanted 2 fridges to store their leftovers in. They were subsisting on their snacks, and storing the food that they'd buy at the hotel restaurant. This happened in the early 1990s. I was cleaning up after a guest who had checked out, and our manager made us count all the towels to make sure they didn't steal any. I was missing 1 towel, but I found it on top of the television. When I picked it up, something soft and pink fell out. I instinctively went to catch it, but it was slippery and dropped right through my hands. I looked at it and I was like, what the heck is this? I called a couple of co-workers and we all looked at it, none of us knowing what it was. It was some sort of pink, slimy sleeve. I'm guessing you all kind of figured it out, but my young naive mind had no idea. So, after showing it to about 5 or 6 random employees, we collectively figured out that it was some kind of masturbation toy. We had the best laugh about it all day long. To top it off, my manager called the guest to let them know that they left some personal items in the room. Haha. No idea if they ever returned to pick it up. When I went with my school for the equivalent of spring break, in Spain, Calp, some guys one night partied so hard that they ended up puking inside the bedroom. And someone thought it was a good idea to grab all the clothes that were making a pile and put it on top of the puke to cover the stain and the smell. Next morning they basically plead for the cleaning lady to clean it. They ended up paying €20 or €40 to the lady. Crack pipe in the coffee maker. I'm a catastrophic insurance adjuster and I work the hurricanes and big storms. I'm in a different hotel room every night, and depending where I am, I don't always get to stay in the nicest ones. LA Quinta is the cleanest for the money usually. I have to say, I have stayed in thousands of hotel rooms over the years, but I'm still always grossed out by them. You just know that you are sleeping in a bed that many gross people have slept and did lots of gross things in. I did find a big black D under a bed once when I was in South Carolina. They didn't even comp my room for that one. I buy sleeping bag liners so I at least have a barrier between me and the sheets and it helps me sleep better. A suicide attempt. Had a worried mom call the front desk and ask us if we're staying at the hotel. We aren't allowed to give away info, but she said that he's got some mental issues and he is a high suicide risk. So we take down her info and call the police. I go to the room and knock on it and can clearly hear someone having a panic attack inside, screaming, crying, etc. I decided to open the room before the cops showed up and found a room almost literally covered in blood. Imagine a Dexter-type murder scene, and that's what it looked like. The cops got there a minute or so later and were able to subdue the man. He survived. The real fun part was trying to recover the damages afterwards. I worked as a housekeeper for about a year in a hotel and never saw any strange, which to me is the strangest thing. Frequent traveler here. I was staying at a full suite hotel and had a kitchenette. In the back of the utensil drawer there was a bee plug mixed in with the small items like the wine opener, measuring spoons, and such. I stopped cooking at that point and just went with carry-out food. Worked at a local cheap hotel chain in town as housekeeping, shadowing the boss in Deans. We were told all the previous night's guests were gone and went about changing the rooms. The second to last one still had the do not disturb still on the door. Didn't think anything of it. People are in a rush leaving. Okay, that's fine. Do the obligatory knock as we're told, no answer, so we just head in to clean and we find the man that checked in days before sadly hanging in the room. Still think of him years later, and after that we were told to place Bibles in the bedside drawers of guests. Only being a teen I didn't realize this was unfortunately common in places like that. At the hotel I worked at, we had to basically rebuild a bathroom. As I was taking out the ceiling tiles, a PMAG dropped down. It was of 60 plus women. Definitely the strangest thing I ever found. Well, it's not exactly something that was there, but more like something missing. I had to call some guests to see why they haven't checked out with the front desk, but I didn't get a response. I went to the room being a 2-bedroom suite, and they actually had 2 suites booked, and when I entered there was no one there. The room was trashed with garbage everywhere and literally a felling pizza slice stuck to the ceiling, which I'm assuming was made purposefully as a joke, but one thing stuck out. The fridge was missing. I looked around but couldn't find it. Did they steal it? The moment I entered the other bedroom suite, which was as well trashed but not as bad as the previous one, and went in one of the bedrooms, I finally saw it. The fridge was there. They moved the fridge from one suite to the other and put it next to the bed. At least they didn't steal the fridge, so that's nice. Still charged them for the trashed room though. Was a part-time house cleaning service in a hotel. This is a bit weird, but not gross. Some guy standing in swim trunks on the bed, with 5 fricking mins balanced on his head. I just left and did the cleaning an hour later, and the guy looked a bit embarrassed outside of the door. Knocked, no answer. Walked in to see 2 sweaty men with guns around them. In the middle the ironing board open with different trays of green dye, paper everywhere, and a photocopier. They were attempting to make counterfeit money. I slowly shut the door and went about my business. I got a good tip when they left, and yes, it was real money. Besides dead bodies and toys, we had this dude Derek stay with us, and he had 14 bottles of Bayford wine and a Sam's Club size box of frozen sausage biscuits and gravy. He ate all over the room. There was no surface mist, even the ceiling and walls. Then after we kicked him out and charged him, he sat in his truck across from us and we could see him trying to sleep in the cab. Suddenly, while housekeeping was cleaning the room in full hazmat gear, they hear sirens coming. They look over and the cops are surrounding Eric with guns drawn. We crack jokes about him sting all over their cruiser from the stairs. Turns out what we didn't get to see was him sting out all the balloons of drugs he had up his bee. I was staying in a hotel on a work trip and came back to find a note that said, "Do the whip neigh neigh and bark like a dog," along with a heart-shaped sucker. I thought it was weird and mentioned it over dinner, and the company guy with us freaked and made me tell the front desk and everything. I'd been a blue-collar worker up to that point and was like, dude, probably just the maids having fun. Calm down. During Christmas time, the hotel I used to work at would host a convention of chess enthusiasts. They'd have tournaments all weekend long. At the end of their convention they'd all hang out in the lobby, bragging about their various wins and whatnot. Being the Christmas season, we were extremely busy, and these folks were crowding the lobby. Eventually the manager had to approach them and ask them to leave because we can't have chestnuts posting in an open foyer. I worked at my grandparents' motel in the summer when I was a kid. It had hourly, nightly, and weekly rates. I saw lots of terrible things: drugs, prostitutes, starving kids, a botched abortion. Probably explains a lot about me. Quite a few people died in the motel and we would box up their stuff for a while, but no one ever came for it, so we would claim items while boxing it up and get it when enough time passed. Over 30 years later I have one item left that I got in about 6th grade. The Dead Guy Dictionary. It's one of those massive dictionaries that would be on the end of an aisle at the library on a lectern. When we found the guy dead, OD as usual, the room looked like you would expect a junkie's room to look, except for this huge dictionary on the coffee table. I claimed the dictionary immediately. I think it honestly the oldest thing I have and the only thing that has made it through every move and even a divorce. I'm from Guam, and there was this documentary recently called Exotic made by some mainland filmmaker about workers and exotic dancers on Guam. It showed at the Guam International Film Festival. Yes, we have a film festival. The documentarian interviewed an old retired worker, who told this story of a Japanese client she had who was really into humiliation apparently. So she set up for them to meet at a fancy hotel, which coincidentally is the hotel my mother worked in. She worked front desk when I was a kid. So as I hear this story in this documentary, I keep in mind my mother worked in the hotel at the time. So yeah, this former worker said this was a regular client but she wanted to do something extra special for him. So she made him crawl around in a diaper whipping him. That was standard, she said. Then she brought out a metal chains. She made him crawl to the toilet bowl and wrapped him up several times around in heavy metal chains and many heavy duty padlocks. And then she just left him. She heard later housekeeping found him just a couple later and getting him free was like a whole ordeal because like engineering came. Managers came trying to figure out how to get him out and then they had to find a locksmith, but apparently there was only one locksmith on the island at the time who could handle those locks and he was closed that day, so literally someone had to track him down to his house and explained the situation. So many people in the hotel got involved. Apparently he came several times during the ordeal in his diaper and he told her it was the best time of his life. I wondered if my mother knew about it but I have not dared ask her. Doesn't quite fit in here but room service once tucked in my stuffed animal when I wasn't there. Just thought that was super cute.